Hello Internet. Today we're going to be looking at super basic bullet mechanics. So there was a question on Reddit asking how to do super basic rigid body based bullets. And so that's what we're going to be making today. They gave some sample code, and that's what I've pulled in here. I've pulled in their ship weapon controller and ship flight controller. We can look at that code quick. It's pretty simple. This one just moves it a little bit horizontally, and this one is going to fire when you press space. It's going to instantiate a rigid body when you press space. So what we want to do now is, well, first, I think I'm going to actually change this. I don't think my input is configured, so I'm going to change this to a get button down of the key code space. So this shouldn't change anything. It should just work. No. Okay. Maybe. This is going well. All right, so we have get key down. I'm changing it to use the key code instead of the name. And that should just be a little bit easier to refactor and things like that. But other than that, we're going to use just their basic controls. I haven't configured any of this. So let's actually set up this weapon controller. So I'm going to need a player position and a bullet prefab. So I'm going to stop playing here and assign I have two weapon ports assigned on either side to the front of the ship. They're right there and there. And so I'm going to assign one of those here. And then I already have a laser created that is right here. Was right there. Where'd it go? Oh, okay. One sec. There it is. I had all of my origins wrong. Oops. So this is really basic laser. It's just a black cube and inside of a white cube, which is super simple. All we need to do is attach let's do a rigid body. And we don't need a collider. I'm going to add one. So we're going to add a box collider here. And that's going to break the prefab instance. We knew that. And then let's change this collider to be correct. So we'll do like 0.75, and then we'll make it like that wide and whatever. So we're constraining ourselves to using rigid bodies to detect everything. So this is going to do actual physics simulations. We're not doing raycast. We're not doing anything like that. If you want to see that, what I'm doing for my rope, I forget what I'm calling it, my grapple hook. Look at that, and that will show you how to do raycasts to detect stuff, so you don't need rigid bodies connected to that. But here, we're working with rigid bodies. So we have our laser, and it's just got a basic collider on it and a rigid body. I'm going to turn gravity off on it, mostly because if I don't, it's just going to fall, and we don't want that. So now that we have all of this, I'm also going to make it a kinematic rigid body. And this is going to prevent other forces from affecting it. The next thing I'm going to do is change the collision detection to continuous. And this is going to make it, instead of detecting every frame, it's going to detect constantly throughout its movement. So say your bullet moves really fast and your game speed is relatively slow. It's possible for your bullet to start here one frame and like here the next frame. And so all that space in between, if there was like a wall or something, it would just go right through it. And we don't want that. So continuous kind of helps solve that problem. And I think that's all we need to do there. So that will set up our really basic laser. And then all I need to do is I'm actually not going to use this. I'm going to delete it and assign the prefab instead. If you use the one that's in your scene, when that one gets destroyed, it won't be able to instantiate any new prefabs. So we're going to create a new one. And what should happen now is if I press space, we're going to create a bunch of stuff right in the middle. So we're just constantly creating new lasers right there. But we can move our ship side to side and create stuff. So the next thing we want is we want a way to, one, manipulate our laser so it spawns where we want it to spawn, and two, apply some velocity to it. so that it does what we need it to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to treat this weapon controller sort of like our gun. And so it is going to be what actually fires the bullet and gives it its initial velocity. And then if there's additional things that need to happen to the bullet, we're going to apply those to the bullet itself. So if you want to do like homing missiles, for example, you would apply that to the bullet and not have the weapon controller handle that. So we are going to go and grab this, create a new C# script, and we'll just call it our, actually, no, we don't need that. Sorry, that is wrong. Let's grab our ship weapon controller and let's make this transform into an array. And what we can do now is for each variable position in our player positions or in our weapon positions. Yeah, we'll call it weapon positions. So for each weapon position, we are going to want to instantiate a new bullet. So this way, if you have like quad lasers or whatever, all you have to do is change this and it will just spawn more. So you don't need to create any new things, you don't need to configure it, it's just all tied to that. And then we just need to assign this so that its spawn point is at the position dot position and it's looking down the position dot rotation. And that rotation is important because it's this way our enemies can use the exact same weapon controller, and we can in the end you can actually end up just taking out this part that's tied to the direct input, and then your players and your enemies can both use the same controller. They just have a different way of firing. So you can have some sort of you can have some model or something that's controlling that instead of directly tying it to the input. So what I'm going to do here is just for debugging, I'm going to do an on draw gizmos. We're going to set the gizmo color equal to, let's do like red. Red is usually pretty good. And we'll just draw a quick ray. And what I'm going to do is actually loop over all those positions again and draw a quick ray. So we want gizmos.drawRay. And this is just going to draw from the position to the position, and we're going to give it a forward vector. Yeah. So this should draw two red lines coming from our player towards where they're aiming. So if I just set those up quick, we'll see two red lines show up. And this kind of gives us a visual indication of where those bullets are going to come from and where they're going to go. So this kind of makes it easier for us in the long run. And then if I run this, like so, we should see them spawn. They're a little bit wrong direction, and that's just some tweaking we have to do with the actual laser itself because it's incorrectly oriented. But we can actually work with that. So to do that, I'm going to, we can actually just rotate these like so. And that will work. If you don't want to do that, there's other solutions there. Actually, yeah, let's do the proper way instead of the quick way. So we've got our laser, and we can do that. It looks perfectly fine, and we can actually, since it's a 2D game, we don't even need this. We can actually just use a constant here and just use the identity matrix for this quaternion. And that should make it spawn correctly. So we don't even need to worry about that laser. So now I can fly back and forth and it's still wrong. That was weird. Oh, I know why. I did not apply the prefab. So everything is still broken. All right, that should fix it. So now we should have our lasers spawning like so. And they look correct. They're correctly positioned, correctly oriented, and all that fun stuff. Now we want to actually give them a velocity. And this is actually really easy. This is one line. Well, two lines. So if we do a public float, we'll give it a initial velocity. So we'll call it just bullet speed. That works. And so when we instantiate this, what we want to get out of here is we want to get the rigid body back. So I'm just going to save that as the bullet body. And then with the bullet body, we want to, that's not what I was expecting. We want to cast this to a rigid body. And then we want to set the velocity equal to the vector 3, actually, not that, equal to our position dot forward times the, what were we going to multiply it by? Bullet velocity times our bullet speed. There we go. Okay, so this is going to multiply our bullet speed, or it's going to set the velocity of our rigid body. And that should be good. That's all we need. So set it to 0. That isn't going to do anything, is it? All right. So now they should go up at 5 meters a second. Okay. Or not. One sec. Interesting. Huh. Okay. I feel silly now. Oh. So when we set it to a kinematic bullet, that breaks this. So if I actually turn that off quick, you'll see that it actually will work. So kinematic isn't going to actually simulate that part of it. But if we keep it on, this happens, which is actually pretty cool. I kind of like this. I think I could find a use for this, but it isn't really what we want. It isn't what we want at all. I do like that. So we do want this kinematic, and we also are going to want this to be set as a trigger. And so the importance there is that if it's a trigger, I wouldn't expect that to happen. Okay. Regardless of that, we're going to use kinematic stuff. That was just more for my own messing around. And I'm going to actually apply some fun stuff here. So we're going to do a bullet controller. And this is going to handle simulating the actual bullet and also detecting its hits. So since we're using a rigid body, it's going to hit things, and we want to actually detect that. And the easiest way to do that is do an on trigger enter with the collider as the argument there. And so since our rigid body is going to have a box attached to it, and that box is going to be a trigger, we're going to get this function called as soon as it enters a collision with something. And we can use that to manipulate how our bullet actually works. So the easiest way is just to destroy this game object when it hits something. You'll see pretty quickly this isn't going to work exactly as we intend, but it's fine for now. The next thing I'm going to do is require a rigid body. Like so. And so this just makes it so that a rigid body is required on anything this is attached to. So I can do a rigid body here, like so. And then we can do rigid body equals get component of type rigid body. And that should work. So now we should have our rigid body assigned there. And so what we can do is actually transform this forward, which I don't think is actually what we want to do. Hold on. Visual Studio is being quite weird again. I believe there's a move, But unfortunately, I don't actually know how to do this because I don't have IntelliSense. So we'll guess in the dark real quick and hope this works. That may be a syntax error, but I believe what this is telling it to do is move the rigid body to a specific place. I don't know if this is a translation and moves it this far, or if it moves it specifically to that point. If everything spawns in the center, we'll know which one it is. Or it will break because it doesn't have a move attached to it. Okay. One sec. Gonna kill that quick. So while that's restarting, what we need to do is, one, detect if our bullet hits anything, but we also want to apply some sort of mask or change the physics so that those objects only hit certain things. And either one works. I think we're going to use layers just because it's simpler. And that way we can have our player, our enemies, and our bullets on, and our player bullets and our enemy bullets on 4 different layers. And so our player and our enemy bullets will collide, but the enemy and the enemy bullets won't collide, and the player bullets won't collide. And that way our player doesn't just immediately shoot themselves, which is what I'm kind of expecting to happen here as soon as this works. Rigidbody dot. Okay. Move position. I was close. And that makes me think that we're going to want to move it to something like this. So we're adding our position to that plus the rigid body's velocity. And this is just required because of the kinematic nature of everything, which still probably isn't required. And you're going to get some weird things happening because it's kinematic, because you kind of have to do some of the stuff yourself. Still isn't working. Okay. One sec. We're going to turn kinematic stuff off, and I'm going to do the layer stuff. Because I don't like making things kinematic unless they have to be. That was just kind of riffing on an idea here. So we want a player, we want an enemy, we want a player bullet, and an enemy bullet. And so now that we have those 4 layers configured, what we can do is edit the physics. So our player does not collide with the player, and he doesn't collide with the player bullet. And our enemy doesn't collide with the enemy bullet or enemies. And that should be it. So our player bullet should not collide with itself and shouldn't collide with the enemy bullets either. So bullets don't collide with one another, and our player and enemy cannot collide with each other or their own bullets. So now that that's all sorted, that's not going to fix anything yet because we haven't actually assigned any of these. So I'm going to do that quick. Wait, what? Do I not have? Oh, that might be part of the problem. Let's save this as a quick prefab just for my own sanity. Let's do an enemy as an enemy. And then the laser is just going to be a player bullet. I just configured the enemy bullet just because I could, not because we're going to use it. So there it is. Now they shouldn't collide. If they do, something horrible has happened. Okay, and that was expected. Because they're physically simulated, they should hit things, and that hit that player. So I think that's that. The only other thing we need is we need to actually detect that hit and then destroy those, which kind of confused why they didn't. On trigger enter is never used. Well, yeah, I get that because it shouldn't be, but it should be part of Unity, so that should have worked. Huh, okay, so that didn't work. Why not? One sec. skipped over a bit of the work. One of the things that is required for collisions to be detected is things need to have rigid bodies on them. So I'm going to do that quick. And the reason this is required is because rigid bodies have to say something's moving or not. And so, though I would still expect it to hit this, but we should need some sort of rigid body attached to movable objects. Well, that didn't work. Okay. What is going on here? Because it's obvious, so what I'm confused about, it's hitting that. It's obviously hitting that, but it's not quite working the way I intend it to work. Because these lasers are triggers, and they will hit that. We know they're hitting it because they're applying force to it, and it's flying away. What we don't understand, what I don't understand, is why this trigger isn't getting called. So let's log this out. Trigger collision. And let's try this again. We're starting to realize that I do not play that much with... I don't do much with like rigid body stuff, with rigid body bullets at least. Mostly because I haven't needed to. But this doesn't... It should work. And I'm kind of confused why it isn't. Because I would expect to get a message when our laser hit. That should be something that we see, but we don't. Unless... Oh, I bet I know what happened. One sec. So, we have our box here. And both of these also have box colliders, which is not what we want. And that's just because I created it from the default Unity cube. So I imagine what happened is they were colliding. There we go. Okay. So now it goes through it, which is more in line with what I was expecting to happen. So, since that is happening, now it should be triggering this trigger still though, because it should hit it. Unless, no, that's an enemy. One sec, let me check these physics properties again. So our enemy can collide with our physics bullet. Okay, so that all makes sense. So now that we have all of that, let's get confused. So, okay. This is interesting. One sec. Just gonna pause this quickly and look at, well, that's definitely hitting. It's definitely inside at least. Okay. One sec. If we change this to on collision enter, we're going to get a collision instead. And I'm going to disable that. And then under our laser, let's make that not a trigger so it will actually hit the thing. And let's see what happens. More confusion. Okay, so before people start yelling at me in the comments that I have no idea what I'm doing, let's figure this out. So our enemy has a rigid body and a box collider on it. And there's nothing else there, so it should just, that's all that we have. Our laser also has that. and should be hitting things. So why does our enemy and our laser... Oh. So important step. Attach your component to your actual object. That is required and will make it not work. I feel like an idiot, but that's okay. That's sort of the point here. So let's add that. Okay. Now it should actually work. It should actually do what we intended it to, which is probably why this wasn't working in the first place. But we don't need that anymore because we made it not kinematic. So, okay. I'm going to delete everything we don't need from this, which is all of the rigid body stuff. And I'm going to switch this back to a trigger. So on trigger, enter. Okay. So, that was, sorry, it gets hard when you do these videos and you start thinking about one thing and trying to get ahead of yourself. Anyway, that's all done. So now it should actually work. I didn't set that to have a trigger on it because that should have gone right through. Okay. Is trigger is true. Fire again. And the important thing is now we got 2 messages of trigger collision from our bullets. And that's what we needed. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to send a message called on bullet collision. And so this is going to call on bullet collision in every attached component. And it's not going to do this script is not going to do anything else. That's all it's going to do. And then if I go over to this project scripts, let's make a new component that actually uses that. And let's call it like destroy bullet on collision. And so what this is going to do is if I name it the same thing as I specified earlier, on bullet collision, we want, where'd it go? There it is. So we want a new function that there's no arguments yet. We'll get to that. And all this is going to do is just destroy the game object. So all that is going to happen is when we enter a trigger, this is going to send a message. And if then we attach this script to that object as well, it's going to see that message and then it's going to destroy it. So what should happen is if we attach it to our laser, like so, destroy bullet on collision, what should happen is now our bullets should die as soon as they hit this. And you can see that's happening. They're disappearing. And so what you can do with this is you can sort of modify it as much. If you want like crazy effects or you want to apply damage or you want to do anything, you now have a message that is being broadcast across your entire bullet that is saying, we hit something, let's do something about that. And so there's one final thing that I want to do before I wrap this up, and that's going to be, we're going to send some information. Specifically, we're going to send the collider we hit. And so we should be able to see that over here. So we're going to log that. Collider.gameObject.name. And so this is going to log the name of the object that we hit from this new message. So we can actually detect in all of our other components what we hit just by implementing this message and attaching it to this bullet. So let's try that, and then hopefully that should be it. So we fire, we hit, and we see we hit the enemy twice. And so we can do stuff like that. If you want to apply damage, it's pretty simple, because now you have a reference to your enemy. So you can just apply damage to that enemy just like you normally would. So all of that works. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, and if it was, let me know. And if there's anything else you want to see, leave a comment and tell me what you want, what you like, what you don't like, and I'll hopefully make more of these in the future. So until next time, see you, Internet.